This is a much bigger audience than I was expecting this evening, so thank you everyone for coming by. It's great to see so many people here that I know, and the students and the faculty from this college. It's wonderful to do a show at Mesa College. I want to thank Carlos and Shona and Pat Bine in particular. This is a wonderful group of people to be working with, so it's really been a pleasure, the whole process. The talk I'm going to give tonight about my work, what I'm going to do is try to just basically trace the iconography of the work from the beginning of 1976, a series of self-portraits, and just sort of like show you some key pieces from each period in my work, and just bring it up to the present time.
Doing good.
Okay. I did my undergraduate work at the Pratt Institute in New York, and then moved to Chicago and did my MFA program at the Art Institute of Chicago. And when I graduated from the Art Institute, at that point I actually wondered if I'd ever do art. The whole experience had been really, I was very young when I went to graduate school, and it was a confusing time for me. And so when I finally got out, I was sort of like, I don't know if I'm going to do this or not. Basically quit making art and waited until I really got interested in beginning again. And what happened was suddenly all the work that I'd been doing in graduate school really didn't matter to me. It seemed to me that I'd spent a lot of time covering up what it was I really wanted to deal with and what I was really interested in dealing with in my art. And the thing that fascinated me was myself, and so so when I started working again, I decided to just go back to working with figuration, and I started doing a series of these drawings, these full-color paintings on paper. This is a Prismacolor drawing, and it's really where what I would call my real work began, and this is actually what I started showing with as well. So. It was a series of 10 drawings. I think they took a year. I'll show you a few of them. From that body of work, I've always used my own life as the subject matter of my art. My art's very personal. It always has been. It's been this journey of either being very direct about what I'm dealing with or working very symbolically or in terms of metaphors. But the material really has been about my own life. It's not been about art theory or about issues in formal theoretical philosophical issues about painting. That's never what drove me to become an artist in the first place. I mean, I enjoy the formal qualities and I love the history of painting, but it was basically my own life that drove me to paint. And so my works tended to be very autobiographical. So from those early self-portraits, I progressed into further dealing with my own life and lovers. And central to my life was my relationships. And so I started dealing with the erotic images and showed these at Nancy Lurie Gallery in Chicago. And at the time, this was around early 1980s, late 70s, very controversial work. The first time this show was reviewed, I was reviewed by a critic named Alan Ardner, who actually said somewhere in the review, "This artist must be stopped." It's like this is like my first review. It was really. I've never even heard a critic say anything like that ever. I mean, it was really amazing. It was just he found everything so utterly dangerous that I was doing. It was really great for my career to have this kind of controversy generated right at the beginning. Psychically, I really hated it because I'm not that kind of person. I wish I had gotten more of a thrill out of it, but. It was interesting because the art scene got a thrill out of it. It's like the artists got a thrill out of it. They loved the work. People got behind the work. And so I was showing with a very good dealer who was very courageous, and she was very encouraging. And Andy Warhol was in town with a prominent collector from Europe named Thomas Mann, and they walked into the show and bought half the show, which was also a really nice thing to happen on a first show. But they were gay too, so they liked it. It was like... And the other person they bought was my ex-lover. They went in and bought a bunch of her work too, so it was great. But these formally, I mean, I was very influenced by Matisse and the field paintings of Matisse, the Red Room, the Red Studio, and you can see those references. And then dealing with art references from all over the world, basically statues, Japanese screens. You see a lot of art history being incorporated. These are made-up spaces. Like those large-scale drawings you see in the show, drawing's always been a prominent part of what I do. I've always done full-color paintings on paper, full-color drawings. It's just something I've enjoyed. I find drawing to be like breathing. It's very easy for me to work that way. I just flow very easily. It really shocked me that the idea of like portraying images of love, which would be so shocking to people, and to this day I don't quite understand that, because I don't find them particularly pornographic or outrageous in any way, and so the whole idea of them being so incredibly outrageous to some people amazes me, because it doesn't make sense to me. This is a drawing on black paper. It's about 20 by 30 inches. Another one of these early studies. From that point on, I moved to New York around 1981 and went through this really almost punk phase in my work, just very real love-hate relationship with the history of painting. I love it, but at the same time, I couldn't relate to it at all. I would look at it and just go, where do I fit into this? And so it just was real love-hate. And a lot of the ideas, I was having tons and tons of ideas, and so I started making just lots and lots of these raw paintings. This is based on that Breck ad, the Breck girl. Remember the Breck girl? So I made her into a radioactive Breck girl, because I mean, this whole idea of the blonde thing, I just, I've heard it, but I don't relate to it. This is a small painting. This is another drawing from that time frame. It's just very really starting to work with putting different imagery together, dealing with the urban landscape. I was reading Mary Daly at the time. I've also really been influenced by a lot of literature. Colette, Henry Miller, just a lot of French writers. These are decals stuck on this drawing. This is, again, Prismacolor on a dark ground. Different modes of representation, some very abstract, just really playing with a lot of ideas in these collaging elements. Started to work with this idea of this like laughing idiot. I was sort of still working, screaming, still working with the radioactive Breck girl imagery, that like, still trying to deal with this, normal image of like whatever women are supposed to be in this culture. Like, I'm really interested in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and just, science fiction and transformation, so. And then there are a lot of these industrial magnate paintings. I have a student right now who's throwing a lot of sparkle in my paintings. I'm telling her, oh yeah, I threw sparkle in my paintings. I did all that. It's like, I don't think she believes me, but it's like. These were small paintings, but again, this was a year where I was just like painting hundreds and hundreds of these small paintings. They were fast, you know, really playing, really getting the images out. I had a lot of ideas, and I just arranged them in narratives. And I'm selecting paintings for you that were powerful images, but there were a lot of them. But I believe in finding a working process that matches how you're thinking, that matches how you're feeling, and just, you know, if you have a lot of ideas, find a way to get them out. A lot of the students that I work with, you know, they have tons of ideas, but they don't know how to get them out. They don't know how to work with it. I think it really helps to find a way to do that. So from that point, what I'm showing you are different transitions in this work. You can see this is a shape painting called Morgana, and you can see it. It's on the black ground. It's a shape, so you can sort of see these sort of formal things that are coming in from those shaped drawings of the blue mooses and all these different devices that I'm playing with. But at this point, I started to focus on really beginning to paint these women and paint them a little bit more, making them a little bit more prominent. This is another small painting. It's called Contemporary Red Man. This painting's called I Only Have Eyes for You, and it was shown at, a pair of these paintings was shown at the Venice Biennale in 1984. It was curated by Marcia Tucker in the New Museum. And the theme of the show was Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, which was a theme that they were really seeing running through a lot of like young American painters. There were 24 painters in that show, and it's this really deep American idea. It's deep in our psyches of like paradise, coming here for paradise, and then Paradise Lost. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast, which is like an industrial wasteland essentially. It's like, you know, looking at Breck Girl ads. I mean, it's just sort of like American Beauty, except 25 years, 40 years ago. It's American Beauty I can really understand. Let's just put it. But this painting was shown in that show, which was great. I was sort of getting, starting to paint these kind of like male gigolo figures, sort of like out of like, they were a combination of Colette reading. I love Colette's my favorite author, and she just had a lot of gigolos and a lot of people running around, and also a combination of Richard Gere, American Gigolo. It's just like, what a racy character, It's just, I want to be like him. I want his life. I don't know. Here's this, walking on water, and you see that in these new paintings. You see these images of these women like walking on water lily pads or walking on water. It's the same. And what I'm trying to show you is illustrate to you in a way is sort of the development of these ideas. And there's sort of an image bank that really runs through my work. It's hard to see because you never see anybody's full body work, but it's there. This was right when I first moved to New York in 1981, running around to the women's bars, just really being in New York, just really being in that environment, just very amazing, starting to deal with all that. This is a small painting. This is about 8 by 10. This is a larger painting, so it's jumping from these small studies into doing the large paintings. It's the same thing I'm doing in that show. I'm showing you some small paintings and then jumping to the larger studies. It's like you don't really go straight to a big painting, okay? It's like there's a lot of preliminary work. There's a lot of preliminary thinking. That's kind of what I'm showing you tonight with this selection of work. And it's like, in my case, periods of my work have usually lasted about 5 years and built up to crescendos, basically, to where finally the big major pieces come out. This is a painting called Route 22 to Nowhere. These were shown in New York. This is, again, the early 80s. These were large-scale paintings. And Route 22 to nowhere, that refers to a road. I grew up in the suburbs in New Jersey, and so a lot of these paintings dealt with, like, actually my adolescence and growing up there, and the visuals of, like, that just very industrial landscape. That got really into me somehow. This is a painting called Radioactive Housewives, and again, it's like that. It's like that sea of Valium and alcohol in the suburbs. It's just like, God, that floating space of the suburbs. This is a big painting. This painting is called Atomic Birth. At that point, pretty soon after that, I moved out to California, and this was a series. I'm jumping. I'm leaving out some animal paintings in between. I went through a real transition when I moved out here in 1984. This is from around 1986, and it's about 6 feet by 6 feet. It was a series of paintings that showed up in Los Angeles, and just collage thinking. It's almost like James Rosenquist, I think, like the putting images together from the media. This is a painting of Marvin Gaye done. Remember, his father killed him. It was like, he's like one of my favorite artists of all time, and it just that was really shocking what happened to him. So the painting is a tribute to Marvin Gaye. This is, from then, again, the work went through a lot of transitions. This was a series of animal paintings done in, I think, late 1992, were shown at David Zaffin. I'll show some of those. Very complex build-up layering. They're large-scale paintings, a lot of like just layering and building up these spaces, very complex spaces. This is a large-scale color drawing on paper. Soon after that show, I moved back to New York. This is in 1992, and we decided to go back to New York. We'd been out here a long time. We just felt like we were losing connection with the New York art world and with that culture and with seeing painting and just being in a different kind of information scene. Just a really, it's a very different scene from here. So we decided to go back, and I took a year off from teaching, took leave of absence, and went back, and this was one of the first paintings I started working with. It's just really influenced by being back in New York, and I started seriously at that time looking at Italian Renaissance painting and going to the Met and going to the Frick and really, really beginning to look at the history of painting. It's like I finally had some time, I could do it, and I sort of just made a decision to try to start to use it as some underlying structure for these, for piling this imagery in. So these were a series of small paintings. They're based on paintings by Mantegna and Bellini and different 15th, 14th century Italian painters, and then transforming them. It's like I was trying to, it's like so many times, it's like I can remember so many times looking at the history of painting. I love painting, but it's just also feeling very like, where do I belong in this? And it's just like, it was just a project almost like repaint art history or something. It was just like, oh, I'll do it again. Let me use this. And they felt so contemporary to me, these paintings. There's something about it. I don't know what it was. It was almost like, oh, this looks like San Diego. I can deal with this. It's just odd. It was just, the whole thing was just interesting and liberating in some way to me. But playing with all this, you know, you can see the iconography from the earlier work. It's just always there. Just playing with all these games with scale and transformation of the symbols and inventing figures and all that stuff. Then this series, so that was the early part of that series. That was some of them, and I'm just, this series of painting, this was really the beginning of painting from Hell's Kitchen, which is some of the work that's here in this show at this school. These were some of the paintings. These were shown at David Zaff in 1996, so that's about the date on these. These are yeah. I'm very interested in like transforming and inventing symbols and you know, portraying like, you know, very personal information. I mean, this painting that's in the show, it's a girl. My entire family's in this painting. This painting was an epiphany for me. It was, you know, it's a girl refers to like, you know, my own need to really paint and how in the world do you do that? It was just like looking at the history of painting, it was just like, how do you do that anyway? And it just, everything in this painting is what drove me to become a painter in my life, and that's really what it's about. And It's a Girl refers to the birth of a woman painter. There's a little gynecological table. All the bunny men are me, of course. Well, that looks good. That's another large-scale painting, but we'll just go to the next. This is a series of paintings I worked on last spring. I'll just show you a couple. This one's probably going to be, this was a small study, but I'm definitely going to work with it on a large scale. I love this image. This is another one from that series. These were shown last spring at Barbara Ann Levy Gallery on the East Coast. And this painting, which is probably one of the last two paintings I'm going to show tonight, this was, in the show, there's a painting of two women on a lily pad, and the woman who's in the Christ-like position, that's Fran Ferreira, and she's a model I worked with in New York. This painting is a painting that's going to be shown at the New Museum of Contemporary Art, opening a show at the end of this month called Picturing the Modern Amazon, and Fran was my model, and so I did a number of paintings of Fran Ferreira for this show. It was a really interesting project because it really, what I ended up doing was I didn't end up painting, I didn't want to paint these women's bodies in a really funky way. I felt that, you know, because of like how new their bodies were and what this new image of like these really strong, powerful women, that I had to like play with classical figure painting, and I had to really play with classical figure poses, and that's actually what I ended up doing with my models. I was posing them in 19th century, very typical poses from Proudhon, and using a grisaille underpainting technique. I really wanted to play with this idea of like classical figure painting, 19th century poses, but here is this new information, and what's the tension between that? And so basically, the three muses and the whole 9 yards, I mean, that was basically why I decided to paint in this way, which is something I'd never even attempted before, and it was pretty intense trying to deal with all this. But it was sort of one of those projects where you feel like you take on these things and you feel like, I can't, this is incredibly difficult what I've taken on here, but at the same time, it's one of those projects that just drives you forward. So it was really, really terrific. And meeting them, I mean, the thing about this, it really took me out of my realm. I mean, I was interested in painting strong women. I had worked with a lot of models like that, but these women are professional bodybuilders. And, I felt like Diane Arbus meeting these people. It was just like, it was really another world, and that was really interesting to me to go. And they were wonderful, and I'm really interested in things like that. So it was great. It was a great experience, and really scary, too. I thought I liked strong women's bodies, but then when I started to really, when I had to really, like, confront one, it was like, wow. It was way out of my realm, and as I was painting it was like it became totally beautiful to me, and just she is totally gorgeous, but it was just like, wow. I mean, it really put me out of my orbit, which was great, because how many things do that, So I think that's the last slide, actually. So.
Why don't you leave it there? Well, if you have any questions, please.
You mentioned that you had this desire at one point in the early 90s to redefine sort of classic art.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I've noticed a lot of artists, modern artists, are doing this. And I was wondering, expand on that.
I think that's really interesting because it's like all, all painters draw on the history of painting. That's just the truth. I mean, they all do it, and it's like when I think painters kind of know that. It's I teach painting, and I talk about that all the time because they, students feel that it's stealing or that'll make them less original, but truthfully, it's like you're not going to reinvent the language. You're not going to reinvent what's already been discovered. It's like your job is to sort of like extend the knowledge. And so if you really look at the history of painting, like I was showing my students slides of Max Beckmann's work this week, and there's this definite linkage between Max Beckmann and Hieronymus Bosch, and it's not something that you would see in terms of painting style, but you definitely see it in terms of like the invention of the images. And then, like, it was very clear that he was really looking at Hieronymus Bosch. I mean, it's just like, once you know the history of painting, you can pick the notes up. It's like you look at Richard Diebenkorn and you know that he was working for Matisse. You look at Howard Hodgkins and you know that he was looking at Persian painting. You just know where they're coming from, and it's like a musician. It's like, you don't reinvent your instrument and the language of the music every time. It's like you have to build on what's there. So I think it's like that, and a lot of people are more obvious about it. I think it's more up front now. Hi, Claire.
I've noticed that in a lot of your paintings, you have the image of the curtain.
Yeah.
Make something look as though it's on stage.
Yeah.
Is that inspired by the original Colette?
Yeah, it's inspired by a lot of things. I mean, it's Colette, it's Shakespeare, all the world's a stage. I mean, I sort of do believe everybody's a player here, and it's a very theatrical life we're living. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of characters in this room. Okay. I mean, I'm not the only one. Do you know what I mean? It's like sort of like human life. It's like, boy, we know the same old dramas. Everybody repeats it. You don't even know why you're doing it. It's just like, yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and I went into New York one time, at the beginning of that series, and one thing that really got to me was, I flew in one day, and a lot of times when I go into New York, the first day I'll go to the play, and I went to see this play called Rendezvous with Marlene Dietrich, this one-woman play, and it was just like, it was awesome, and I went back several times, and sort of that was really the beginning of that, really used to that, because the Rendezvous with Marlene paintings, Marlene with Skull, that's really sort of like clearly what I think a more direct, and artists like Florian Stettheimer, I mean, many people have used that device, and I love the theater, and it's a device of sorts.
Where's the snowman coming from?
The
On fire
snowman,
next to
right.
snowman.
That's sort of open for interpretation, I mean, you can, I mean,
There's a little, yeah.
That's a new one.
yeah, that's a new one, all right. That's just another character.
Janet, what artists are you looking at right now?
What am I looking at right now? I don't paint like this person at all, but I think Jenny Saville is a really interesting painter right now. I love Larry Pittman's work. David Wojnarowicz. I mean, I think Jenny Saville probably, for me, had the most interesting show this season in New York. She's a very young British figurative painter. Doesn't work like I work at all, but I mean, really amazing work, okay? So I'm finding her pretty interesting. That's probably the most interesting show I've seen. Do you know her work? She's on the cover Art in America this month. She's really interesting. She's really, read it. It's very interesting work, I think. Yes?
There seems to be such a switch between the Hell's Kitchen series and then the large figurative paintings where the Hell's Kitchen have so many stacked
Yeah.
elements. It's like they're packed full of
Yeah,
imagery.
something about emptying out that
I'm just
space.
wondering what happened, if you know what happened.
I don't know what happened. I decided to empty out the space. I needed to empty out the space. I needed to just get to the point with some of those figures. And I don't know what's, it seems to go back and forth because, if you see the work, it's like icon, complicated. There's like these rhythms that I go through and I sort of just go with what, I had an intense need to empty out those spaces and focus. Yes.
You've been working with classical techniques
Yeah.
for preparation and
Yeah.
understanding. And
Yeah.
What have you discovered for the contemporary work that you're doing that the classical underpinnings are giving you?
It changed the look of the work completely. It changed how I could paint those figures. I mean, I really had to do it for that big project. I really made the decision to do it on that big project because it was a conceptual idea. It was like, the idea was to paint it in that way. And so what's happened, once I got engaged in it, it just kept going and going. They look totally different. They're not-
The physical underpainting
Yeah.
and the preparation of the canvas and all of that. That's not just the formal qualities, but yeah.
What has changed?
Well, how is it, I think you've answered the question, that it's made your images stronger, or you
It's made it look, it's a totally different look. I mean, it's a totally different look to the paintings. It really is. I mean, a lot of people have been shocked by that, but I think it's something that I really wanted to do. I think, as I get more comfortable with this, because of the shift that's happened in the past couple of years, I really think that, that'll shift too, the language. But it's like, I think you have to have, I'm interested in having this huge broad range of language. I've always been that kind of painter. It's like, I want to be able to do it this way, I want to paint in this style, I want to have this, I want that. I want that broad range because I want to be able to speak to, if I need a look here, I want to get that look in the painting. If I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this. So it's reaching to it for more of being, more freedom to a certain extent. Does that make any sense? Yes. Hey, Becky.
Listening to you now and sort of mulling a bit, I was just thinking that your recent paintings are spatially erotic. And what I mean by that is that there's not much space between where the viewer stands and where the background is. So you're forced into the space of the body, and almost really forced into the space of the torso. So the gaze approaches an embrace.
Exactly. It's like right there. I mean, it was interesting. I didn't want to say this, but I mean, Fran's crotch level. I mean, it's true. Well, I mean, and she's huge, and it is true about that is so. I should write that down because that's very good. And thank God I have a videotape. That is so accurate, okay? And I wouldn't have been able to articulate that, but that, I knew, that's exactly what I've been doing, basically.
Well, I'd love to stare at the picture.
I mean, it couldn't be any more confrontive if I sat and thought about it for 30 years. I mean, it is really literally right there. So I totally agree with that comment. It's very smart, actually. I need to write that down. Yes.
Male bodybuilders go to great lengths to make themselves appear hyper-masculine.
Yeah.
With bulging muscles and they're all buffed out. But because their workout is to make them look masculine.
Right.
And because I'm told they're on steroids, they're frequently less potent
Right.
than normal
Right.
athletes. What parallels do you see between the appearance of masculinity in male bodybuilders and the appearance of femininity in female bodybuilders?
I don't know. That's going to be the central issue of picturing the modern Amazon. I mean, that's what the art historians, that is the central premise in the way of the show. That's going to be the central questions. I mean, I don't pretend to have the answers on that one, but it's interesting what you're saying, and it is certainly central to the questions of this new female body, representation of female body. It's so weird because I don't think in terms of gender. The only way I can put it is I don't think in terms of male and female. So I think in terms of beauty. So I don't think in terms of gender. I've said that many times, but if that makes any sense to you at all, it doesn't. It didn't sort of enter my thought, but I know that'll be a central question in the show, and it certainly is for the women bodybuilders. I mean, that's the big question that's leveled at them. That's what they're so scared of, is like, I'm not feminine enough. I mean, that's the big critique. And it's like, I don't know. I had trouble with the radioactive brick girl. I mean, I had trouble from the start with the whole thing, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask. Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about the image of the bunny that prevalent in your painting?
Yeah, it's an evolving symbol. I started out using it as, it's always been a symbol of me. It started out being very vulnerable, and then it went really wild, and then it turned into Bunny Man. It's just been this thing that's like floated along, in the paintings. It amuses me. I don't know. It just seemed to work. I don't know. Yes.
Did you do the bodybuilding paintings before you went into that? I think it's the last one you saw, that you're working on a series of paintings. I think self-portrait was used rather
The bodybuilding is now, pretty much now. It's pretty much what I've been working on for the past year. And those Bunny Man paintings were last spring, but they're pretty recent paintings. They were
that
from
last one, the last one.
the big one.
Yeah.
Friend.
That really was connected to the bodybuilding painting.
It is.
Less being painted.
Yeah.
And the way you're painting.
Yes. Yeah, they are really connected. Yeah. It's something I'm starting to work with now. I've always worked with strong female bodies. I mean, I really have, but it's just that is a realm, and it's just, I've had a lot of questions about it as an image too. So I don't know how it's going to work out yet.
I like how the story's going forward.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Yeah. I think it is too. For me, it is. Yes. Oh, the Rizzoli book, Lesbian Art in America by Harmony Hammond, is coming out in June. So that's 20 seminal figures. I'm looking forward to that. I'm very excited about that book. And then actually Rizzoli's publishing a book on picturing the modern Amazon. There is going to be a book on that show as well. So that's exciting. That's going to be a major book. Yes?
Why don't you explain the difference in the painting technique between the paintings that have the red curtains and
Yeah, they're,
Starting in the spring with Bunny Man, you completely changed it.
yeah, well, they were,
Painting
the
technique.
Bunny Man paintings that happened in the spring were done in that classical grisaille underpainting technique. It was like, there I was working with these like, kind of, yeah, the same
Talk
imagery.
about the underpainting on those.
Yeah, well, they're grisaille. They're exactly what I'm teaching my students, just like, you know, burnt umber, white, grisaille, and then a glazing process. And it was just all these new techniques I was starting to incorporate in my own work. But there you see them in the Bunny Man paintings, and then I went to the figure painting. So that was kind of the start of all of it. You know, just trying to evolve how to work with that. So it's a good question. And if you look at them, if you look at that first painting from 1996, that's a really raw, funky painting, and then you look at the last painting, you can see the difference. I mean, it's a change in the look.
Does that change how you paint in terms of being able to change things and get a painting done in the same amount of time and
No,
work
it's
in the same manner?
it's really different. Like the couple of Bunny Man paintings, I was working on 5 or 6 paintings at once. It's best to work on a bunch at once because it's glazing. It's like it's better to work on 5, 6 paintings at a time. And most of the past couple of years, I've been working on a lot of paintings at once. So it does. And before I'd work on one painting at a time. And actually, I prefer working this way in some ways. There's something to it, because sometimes you feel like working on a painting, you have an energy to work on this painting, then you don't. And before, I would just sort of force myself through a resolution. Now I don't do that. It's like I'll wait till a resolution comes. It's a really different way of working. You go where the energy is. It's like following the energy. And it's good. It's good. I've been changing. I sort of tend to keep changing the way I'm working and thinking about that. I want it to be as fluid as possible and as enjoyable as possible. And I'm mainly interested in that. Yes?
How do you put your ideas together as far as making a composition? Do you look at pictures or refer to your drawing?
I do a lot of photographs. I do a lot of drawing. I take my own material. Some of my sketchbooks are downstairs. We put those sketchbooks downstairs so that people could see the origination of some of these ideas, and most of mine are just really raw, funky drawings. That's pretty much how I get my ideas, is just sitting down and drawing my ideas out. And then taking the photographs or getting the models in or researching what I need to do to put the imagery together. But it is all coming from me with these, and they're downstairs. They're just totally raw, and that's totally how I think of these ideas. But I find that I have to get them down visually. I don't like thinking about all this. I don't like that. It drives me nuts. You know, it's like the more you think, the less you paint. You know, it's weird. It's like the more you think, the more scared you get, or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like you get more and more uptight, and it's like you do less and less, and it's just horrible. So I just try to get them down. Right? Is that true? It's true. Painters know what I'm talking about. Okay, great. Well, thanks so much.